Ejiofor is basically calling Aloy Ejimako and his team out. Barrister Ejiofor is basically saying his lawyers saw to it that this man was imprisoned. They were never prepared for this case. They never really wanted to see this young man out. That's basically what he's saying. Ifeanyi Ejiofor did not just come out to accuse the Ejimako-led legal team about all of this. He had facts. He had to highlight his achievements when he was still in charge of this case. So it is pretty much interesting what he had to put out. Well, Nnamdi Kanu's former legal counsel, Barrister Ifeanyi Ejiofor, has finally broken his silence on the life imprisonment sentence handed down by Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja. And what he has revealed is explosive, unsettling, and deeply uncomfortable. If you are a lover of Nnamdi Kanu, this is something that you would have to see. And I implore you to stay with me till the end of this video, because you will be shocked at some of the things that Barrister Ifeanyi Ejiofor had to say. This episode of Political Arena is going to be mind-blowing, and I implore you to like, subscribe, share, and join the conversation in the comments. For those of us who know Ifeanyi Ejiofor, you will understand that he has been with Nnamdi Kanu since 2015 when this case started. So it is safe to say that he's been very much around. He understands the in and out of this case, and only, took a bow from the case in 2023. So it is only right that he comes out to say what his observations have been since he's been a part of the case. First of all, he titled his statement, Nnamdi Kanu's Avoidable Ordeal: How a Mature Legal Showman Led a High-Profile Case into a Judicial Ambush. In what he put out, he described Nnamdi Kanu's current legal team turned legal counsel or legal consultant in the strongest terms ever. He described them as clowns and people who reduced the case to social media content. Again, this is something that you wouldn't want to miss for anything. According to Ejiofor, the tragedy unfolding today did not begin yesterday. It began the moment serious legal work was replaced with showmanship, and a complex, high-stakes criminal trial was reduced to content for social media. Ejiofor says he had initially chosen to remain silent out of exhaustion and respect for the sensitivity of the situation. But the overwhelming number of calls, messages, and pleas from the public forced him to speak. As the man who handled the case from 2015 to December 2023, surviving threats, attacks, and assassination attempts, Ejiofor says he owes the public the truth, not silence. Now, what did he write? Let's take a look at how he started off. Ejiofor said, I had genuinely intended, out of sheer exhaustion and out of respect for the sensitivity of this moment, to refrain from revisiting this saga. But the avalanche of calls, messages, and trembling voices from our people has made silence no longer an option. I am therefore compelled to offer sober introspection, especially as someone who successfully steered this very case for nearly a decade, securing landmark victories, unassailable legal milestones, and enduring a long trail of threats, assassination attempts, and brushes with death. Through all of this, grace remained my only constant protection. However, after Thursday's spectacle, correcting the wild conjectures, poorly manufactured narratives, and brazen misinformation now circulating like a digital epidemic has become absolutely necessary. Now take a look at that. First of all, the appeal court judgment that was secured for Nnamdi Kanu was secured when Ejiofor was still in charge of this case. So we have to give him his credit. Barrister Aloy Ejimako, Maxwell Opara, and the other lawyers, they have always spoken about this appeal court judgment. But it is important for us to give flowers to whom we should give flowers, because Barrister Ifeanyi Ejiofor was very much on this case when he secured this judgment. Now let's proceed. He said, "The first revelation they won't tell you." Ejiofor states that before his legal team exited the case, they were on the verge of securing another major legal breakthrough after the Court of Appeal discharged and acquitted Kanu in 2022. According to him, strategic diplomacy, airtight legal maneuvers, and sustained pressure had placed Kanu's team in a strong position. But then, according to Ejiofor, Kanu allegedly revealed sensitive strategic details to people he described as clueless clowns. Instead of supporting a strategy they didn't even understand, they hijacked the process, they derailed the strategy, and they orchestrated a change that forced Ejiofor's legal team out. He describes them as bloated, delusional entertainers in wigs, more concerned with Instagram than litigation, more focused on camera angles than case laws. Ifeanyi Ejiofor came to a knife battle with a gun, or should I say with a bomb. He wasn't going to sugarcoat anything, and he came down really hard on the likes of Aloy Ejimako and Maxwell Obara. Now, let's proceed. Follow me carefully on this very matter. I told you this episode is going to be mind-blowing. Now, let's read what he had to say. He said, the first revelation they won't tell you. During the period our team handled this matter, from 2015 to December 2023, up until Professor Mike Ozekhome-san assumed leadership of the legal team in 2022, we were on the threshold of securing yet another major relief for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, particularly after the Court of Appeal discharged and acquitted him in 2022. Sustained pressure, strategic diplomacy, and airtight legal maneuvering had placed us on the verge of another monumental breakthrough. Regrettably, certain sensitive details of this progress were perhaps innocently disclosed by Mazi Nnamdi Kanu to some of his clueless clowns. Rather than support a strategy they barely understood, they seized the information as an opportunity to derail the entire process and treacherously orchestrated a change in the status quo. Consequently, we exited the team gloriously and with our integrity intact. Let us speak plainly. A high-profile, internationally sensitive criminal trial is not a circus ring. But once these bloated, delusional entertainers in wigs inserted themselves into the process, everything degenerated into a grotesque parody of legal representation. Instead of crafting legal strategy, they crafted Instagram stories. Instead of mastering case law, they mastered camera angles. At every court session, their priority wasn't research or preparation. It was posing, filming, updating, grandstanding, and going viral. Meanwhile, the accused man's fate hung by a thread. Ejiofor is basically calling Aloy Ejimako and his team out. Barrister Ejiofor is basically saying his lawyers saw to it that this man was imprisoned. They were never prepared for this case. They never really wanted to see this young man out. That's basically what he's saying. Ifeanyi Ejiofor did not just come out to accuse the Ejimako-led legal team about all of this. He had facts. He had to highlight his achievements when he was still in charge of this case. So it is pretty much interesting what he had to put out. Now, he talked about the tragic turn. Ejiofor alleged that even when the court clearly warned against self-representation in such a complex case, these so-called consultants encouraged it, cheering like spectators at a village square. And the consequences? Number one, a trial that could have been halted moved forward as a full criminal proceedings. A conviction that could have been prevented became almost inevitable. A case that required strategic diplomacy instead became a TikTok legal circus. Ejiofor said this group fed the public with false updates, exaggerated claims, half-truths, social media theatrics. Every lie told outside the court became a landmine inside the court. Every performance online became evidence of incompetence of lying. And today, despite the sentencing, they are back online again, pushing new videos and new false hopes, desperate for clicks, views, and attention. How ugly can it get? How ugly can it get? Do you think Ifeanyi Ejiofor is telling the truth? Reading through his press release today, I was just thinking about the whole situation. Were they really invested in this case as much as they should be as lawyers? Did they do the work? Or were they concerned about social media theatrics? Even Nnamdi Kanu's wife called out his legal team on social media yesterday. How come I'm finding out my husband has been moved to Sokoto on social media? How come you found out that he's been moved to Sokoto prison and the first place you went to is social media to report it? You could not even brief me as his wife. What is it with social media? What is it with always wanting to impress people? How much work did you put in as his legal team? Now, this is a man who has been on this case for almost a decade, Ifeanyi Ejiofor. You have to just give him his credit and his flowers. Some of the judgments that this current legal consultants refer to were gotten when Ifeanyi Ejiofor was still very much on this case. So that is something that we cannot even take away from him. He has every moral standing. He has every moral justification to speak on this matter because he started off. It is almost as if you're looking at your hard work just go down the drain like that. That's what it means. But let's continue. In the same post, Ejiofor said, even after the court explicitly warned that self-representation in a complex constitutional and criminal matter was dangerous, these consultants encouraged it, clapping like paid spectators in a village arena. So, the unthinkable happened. A trial that could have been paused or avoided ab initio had the proper methodology and engagement been applied. A conviction that could have been prevented. An outcome that was entirely avoidable, yet allowed to proceed under the guidance of legal lightweights intoxicated by social media relevance. They railroaded him, knowingly or unknowingly, into the savage pit of a full criminal trial, fully aware that other lawful avenues existed. Look at that again. They railroaded him, knowingly or unknowingly, into the savage pit of a full criminal trial, fully aware, emphasis on fully aware that other lawful avenues existed. So there were other avenues that they could have explored, but they allowed this matter to become a full-blown criminal trial. Right? Just take note of the salient points. He went ahead to say, even while the trial was going on, they busied themselves with dishing out falsehoods, half-truths, and misleading updates to an unsuspecting public. Every lie told outside the courtroom became a landmine inside the courtroom. Every exaggerated update became a contradiction of the prosecution gleefully documented. Every camera stunt became a professional embarrassment. And now, instead of remorse, they have resumed their post-trial routine. Fresh videos, fresh lies, fresh false hopes, desperate for clicks. The tragedy continues because the vulnerable still believe them. Now ask yourself, how many interviews have this legal team, have the likes of Maxwell Okpara and Aloy Ejimako, how many interviews have they granted? within the space of 48 to 72 hours. How many interviews? You should be busy re-strategizing. What kind of defense are you going to put up if you are to appeal this case? Why are you busy doing interviews? Nnamdi Kanu has a brother. Nnamdi Kanu has relations. Nnamdi Kanu has a representative both at the Green Chamber and at the Red Chamber. Obiagocha has been actively involved in this case. So how about you allow him face the media while you get to work as his lawyers? Or should I say in this case, his legal consultants? Why are you so quick to run to the media? Isn't it suspicious? And this is just the point Barrister Ejiofor is trying to raise in this write-up. And for some reason, I am just a little bit upset. And I would like you to look at this dispassionately, without bias. Read through his press statement and you will understand that he is saying nothing but the truth. Now let's come back to the press statement. Ejiofor said the greatest puzzle of all: how did foremost legal minds, globally respected senior advocates of Nigeria such as Chief Kanu Agabi, Chief Onyechi Bazu, and other erudite members of the inner bar, men fully versed in the anatomy of high-wire criminal litigation, become disengaged at the most critical moments of the trial, only for mediocre adventurers to hijack a matter of international significance and reduce it to a TikTok legal carnival. Now, who replaces world-class physicians with herbal storytellers during brain surgery? Who replaces strategic diplomacy with reckless grandstanding? Who replaces law with theatrics? Only a system already preparing for disaster. He says, so where do we go from here? For any meaningful rescue efforts by globally respected legal experts, the first task must be to clean up the monumental damage inflicted by these self-advertising jesters. A comprehensive review of methodology, effective engagement, and drastically reduced publicity must precede any intervention. Only then can a coherent, sophisticated legal and political strategy be fashioned. This is not the time for comedy. This is not the time for inflated egos, and certainly not the time for social media theatrics. It is time for soberness, time for competence, and time for real advocacy. Again, Ejiofor is not the only person accusing Kanu's legal team of social media theatrics. Even Kanu's wife is upset. She seemed to be very upset. For her to put out something like that on social media yesterday, it means that she is fed up with what these lawyers have been doing. If you notice, she's not invested in this case as she should be. Maybe she's just upset the way the whole matter is going. She's just been behind the scene, observing, and just look at what she put out yesterday, which is further indictment on this legal team, or should I call them legal consultants. Get off social media. Get to work. Get to work. Get to work. Nnamdi Kanu is your client. You owe him that responsibility to get him off the hook. Sentiments aside, this is a man who's been on this case for almost 10 years talking, and I totally understand the angles that he's coming from. These are facts, empirical facts. I think I need to just end it here. I'm so mad. This could have been avoided. These guys knew there were options. They chose social media trial and grandstanding. Thank you so much, guys, for being a part of today's episode. I'll see you on the next one.